Good afternoon. Welcome to the Creative Dominion podcast with your host, Diamond D Money 1996. So grateful to be able to bring you episode 3 of the childhood trauma series. Mostly be talking about verbal abuse in this episode, so stay tuned. And so going into verbal abuse, like I said, very excited to be bringing you guys this topic for all my viewers out there. So verbal abuse in regards to childhood trauma is a very serious thing. It's very high tone, if you will. And so there's various forms of verbal abuse. You know, it could be anywhere between, the appearance of, what you look like as a child growing up with your parents saying. It's the slick remarks. It could be the little jokes that everybody thinks is funny but you laugh anyway because you want to fit in. It could be during the arguments and the high stressful times in the household, the slam your door conversations, if you will. That's what I like to call them. And so it's a very serious topic that I don't think is talked about enough. Just in my own personal story, just to kind of go back, like I said, if you haven't listened to the first 2 episodes, I definitely encourage you to go ahead and go back and listen to those. But like I said, growing up, I had a lot of verbal abuse that wasn't really brought light to. And so like I said, growing up, I was the fat kid. And so just little things like, they used to say some people live to eat, other people eat to live. They say you definitely live to eat. Just little comments like that. It makes you think, oh, it's just a joke or it's funny. But, over time, that can have a harmful effect on a child's self-image. And just, like I said, growing up, played sports growing up, but didn't really play football till I was about 14, freshman in high school. So at this point during the verbal abuse, like I said, I really wasn't played basketball outside, but wasn't a full blown athlete. Like I said, I was short. I was about 5'6", 5'5", big round kid, chubby kid. Always, had the snack cakes. Because he used to call me Little Debbie's big cousin Damon. And so, just always had the snack cakes, and just always just getting verbally bullied just on my size alone. And so, when you look at television or social media, especially nowadays, society creates that false self-gratification of what a body should look like. For guys, it's always the, 6-pack chiseled abs, cut up chest, cut up biceps, back, traps all showing. And so growing up, I used to still watch WWE wrestling. And so, seeing all those guys, ripped and cut up, and even the bigger guys kind of being, super strong. And so, as a kid, you're not, throwing people around and, lifting heavy weight. And so just going through that, just really wasn't, had a high self-image. And so my self-image was always low, just going through that verbal abuse. Also, just with verbal abuse, it's also within the home. And so I always call them those slam your door conversations. It's like just like in the TV shows where yelling at your parents, oh, I hate you, or I'm out of here, or, slam the door, or try to sneak out and do different things. And didn't really go through too much of that personally, but I definitely know it happens with the verbal abuse. I just think that also in the school, there's just a lot of peer bullying as that people receive as a child. It could be the way their teeth are. Some people have gap in their teeth or messed up teeth, need braces. Back then they used to say, brace face, or if you wore glasses too early in grade school, they used to say four eyes, or just with verbal abuse, just the body shaming in general. So for me, it was a big, I was big and fat, so it was like the fat jokes. They used to call them your mama jokes as well back then, and they used to be like, hey, you're just a big guy, or they used to call me Fat Darion just growing up. But also I've seen it just with peers on the opposite side as well. Skinnier girls, like the anorexia that they had back then, eating disorders, was a real thing. So for me, it was like binge eating. So when people would make me mad, I'd go home and eat, try to hide the honey buns under the bed kind of thing. But also on the other side of things, seeing, people always trying those different diets, your Jenny Craig's, your Smart Ones, the Fiber One bars. I used to have Weight Watchers, stuff like that, or people, not eating, trying to induce vomiting and, keep a low calorie count. And I just think that, like I said, everybody's your own self-critic. And even if somebody, you think somebody could be the popular kid or have it all going on, but really deep down, they're, not their true self. And it, really helps a harmful effect on your self-image. And I think, verbal abuse, and it doesn't always just come from parents. It could be, relatives as well. It could be aunts, uncles, cousins. If you go to church, your family events, it's just simple stuff. Even how you're dressed, why she come over here with them shoes on, or that shirt's a little too small, ain't it? It's just, little comments like that really makes it, hard to develop a self-image, especially as a young child. You just never know. I know Maya Angelou says that people don't know exactly what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel. And I just remember, like, as a child, going through that verbal abuse and, just, growing up thinking I was nothing. You just go, that's when you try to listen to music and try to find different vices. For me, it was video games and eating, trying to like self-medicate, self-loathe, if you will, in your own pain mentally. And, it definitely leaves mental scars. I just think that, it needs awareness brought to it. You just have to watch what you say sometimes. I know we've kind of grown up in a different world than it was when, I was a kid. A lot more sensitivity nowadays. And like I said, I do believe that, some things harden you, but I also believe that it's about the directive and the verbiage that you use when giving those messages, so especially if you have kids out there, I just encourage everybody just, to encourage them, always lead with positive before going in with negative. And then, some families are different than others. I came from a laughing family, so, we like to what we call roast or joan, or, we have jokes, but, we never go what we call below the belt. And so if you do have kids, just, when you're making jokes, just, watch, kind of be cognizant and be aware of, your surroundings, be aware of, what you're saying, look at body language. But another tip is, watch, how they react. With body language, it could be how they look at you. It could be maybe the next thing they say. Maybe if they're kind of distant, even days later after you said something. And then don't have too much pride to apologize. I know that's the big thing with verbal abuse. It's not just an empty apology of like, oh, I'm gonna say it again, but sorry for making you feel bad. But generally accessing what was said and deeming that it was below the belt or uncalled for, and being able to take that responsibility for your own actions and make sure you address that individual. If it's your own child, address your kid. Kind of pull them to the side one-on-one. Behind closed doors, and just go through what was said, how they feel, and begin to build that trust. As a youth, We have to empower the youth, and we have to allow the youth to trust us with, one, sensitive information, but also with, how we speak to them. Another thing is the tone of voice. When you're speaking with children or anybody in general, but more specifically on the childhood trauma, I just remember, just from my personal story, dad always just yelling. Everything was, yelling. Like, if you didn't take the trash out, it wasn't hey, you might have forgot, just don't let it happen again, or hey, make sure you check the trash out. It was always like a big scene of throwing things and, why didn't you take out the trash? Come on, like, or it'll be a punishment like a whooping, and that goes into more of the next episode of physical abuse, but, just the verbal abuse of always being yelled at. And then what it does, it creates a certain mindset of, your language of how you're talked to. And it actually has a very severe effect on as you grow older, especially when you get into school, when you get into jobs, when you get into college, internships, even just daily going to the bank, trying to buy a house, trying to buy a car. How you're raised and how you're spoken to by your parents or guardians or family members, does have a direct effect on relationships, both platonically and relationshiply and intimately. Even when you start dating, if your parents, all they do is yell, your psychological effects that has on you, you're going to be more receptive to people yelling. But so when you have somebody that, is very calm, very soft-spoken, and very compassionate and understanding, it might throw you off a little bit because you're so used to being yelled at, and that might just be the language that, you're psychologically inclined to enduring. And so we just have to watch, your tone of voice as well when speaking with children. Just growing up, always, like I said, was getting yelled at. And so my mindset growing up, just in my personal story, was if I'm not perfect, then you're just worthless. That's just, like I said, that's what was ingrained in my brain, growing up just from my father's side. You said every mistake I made was always getting yelled at or a punishment, video games taken away, a whooping, a beating. Like I said, I'll go through more of the physical abuse in a later episode, but just on the verbal side of things, that tone of voice matters. And, even if you do say sorry later, that tone of voice really carries weight, as you develop through childhood and through life. Another thing with the verbiage on just how you're speaking is also vulgar words or profanity. Calling somebody dumb, calling somebody slow, or fat, or using profane words, curse words, if you will. That also has a direct effect. I think it has a direct effect, especially in romantic relationships, from a man's side of thing. If you, like I said, I had a great mother growing up, so I didn't really have to deal with that. But, if you're a man and you're viewing, and, you had a mother that, was always putting you down or testing, I call it testing your manhood, or, hey, you're a sissy, or you're a punk, or, men don't cry, or boys don't cry, or, just simple little cliche sayings like that really has an effect on a male, because what it does, it makes us resentful towards women, but also it kind of confuses our psyche, because we don't know how to cope, we don't know how to release pain, we don't know how to communicate our feelings, and that creates, disconnect as we move forward in life, especially when we look at, romantic relationships and potentially having a wife and starting our own family. And that, trickles down from generations. Also on the other side with women, if you have a father or even mother that, is always calling you trash, or, always being profane, or, always putting you down, that again has a direct effect on your relationships as well. And so you're more inclined, just psychologically, I'm going through that as a child, you're inclined to associate what you're looking for with that behavior. And so you're more inclined to date men that degrade you, verbally, and talk to you any kind of way, because that's how your parents talk to you. And it, creates more of a trauma bond, if you will. And so trauma bonding, and that's another topic that really hits home verbally. Like I said, a lot of people don't heal from verbal abuse. And so one sad stigma in today's society is, as you grow older, the years go by, but you never really, unless you have very communicative, understanding, compassionate parents, a lot of those conversations, never happen. Or, unfortunately, maybe a parent passes away, or something happens where, the bond is unpatchable, the bridge is unrepairable, and, time just flies and goes on. And I just think that's not talked about enough. If you are a victim of verbal abuse growing up, or if you are an offender that gave the verbal abuse, to your children, I definitely encourage you to, address that. I think that the biggest form of healing is, communicating and, talking it out on what happened, and, they're genuinely apologizing for what happened and trying to, mend that broken wound. I just think that with verbal abuse, we as children, we turn into young adults that turn into adults, and a lot of things wounds never heal. They just get closed with a curtain, if you will. And then when we're in our adult lives, trying to develop meaningful relationships romantically, trying to start families, trying to develop friendships platonically, with other adults, it also creates a strain on our psyche, on, depending on what we endured. And so few tips is just definitely communication is key. And I think with verbal abuse, the first form of communication outside of seeing, people, their first, when you're a baby, your first words, normally mom and dad, or dad. And then, growing up, if that person that you're the first word they see is mom and dad, if that's the first word they say, you're literally the first person they see when they come out of the womb. If you mistreat them, their whole psyche is that, that's the way it is, until they train their mind how to think otherwise. And so overall, as a society, when we go through verbal abuse, we just overall lack communication, and that communication is, can be directly tied to verbal abuse. And so I appreciate you guys viewing this episode. Like I said, go ahead and give it a like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely appreciate, bringing this into the light on verbal abuse. Again, we will continue to uplift each other. Again, you're not a victim, you're an outstanding survivor, and I want everybody to, continue to progress in a right direction and become the best version of themselves. And so, pleasure having you on here. Go ahead and view this entire series in its entirety. Where we keep bringing content, and I appreciate everyone moving forward. Thank you.